Support for Wavemakers comes from listeners like you and the Tampa Bay Times. The Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper is available around the Tampa Bay area and online at tampabay.com. Thanks to the Tampa Bay Times for their support.
Good morning and welcome to Wavemakers with Janet and Tom, a weekly conversation with people making a difference in the Tampa Bay area. I'm Tom, and if you're a regular listener, you could tell from that opening song that things are a little different today. That was my favorite Christmas record, White Christmas by Darlene Love. Because today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, food. Specifically, holiday food traditions. That's one of the reasons I'm flying solo today, because my wife and co-host, Janet, is home getting ready for tomorrow. Interestingly, today is both Christmas Eve and Hanukkah Eve. We'll be celebrating both tomorrow. It's the first time in almost 40 years that's happened, and we want to hear about how you are celebrating this Christmas, this Hanukkah, this holiday season, with food and drinks. And with us today to talk about this are two local food writers and former Wavemakers, the authors of The Definitive History of the Cuban Sandwich, Andy Hughes and Jeff Hauk. Welcome to Wavemakers, my friends.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
It's good to see you. It's been 2 years since you were on the show to talk about that great book, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the show, but we want to hear from our listeners today. We want to hear from you today. We want to hear what your holiday food traditions are. Are you celebrating Christmas? Are you celebrating Hanukkah? Are you observing Noche Buena today, like many of my Cuban friends, with pork and black beans and rice? Or are you waiting for a big Christmas feast tomorrow? Is it turkey, ham? What's your family tradition? What do you like to enjoy? What do you like to have on the table to bring people together? Or maybe you go out and let someone else cook. Operating the board today is fake Christmas tree fan John Dunn. Answering our phones is Joe Remo. If you want to join our conversation and share your holiday traditions with us, call us at 813-239-9663. You can also email us at dj@wmnf.org or text us at 813-433-0885. I'm hoping Janet will be calling in a little bit, take a break from the Christmas prep, and talk about some of her family traditions. She already made the arugula with a friend of ours, but I don't think we'll be having latkes right away. You know, guys, I'm always amused by the debates I see online over what is a real Christmas song or what is a real Christmas movie. As everyone knows, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. You might say the same thing about Christmas food and drink. Everybody has their own tradition. So let's start with you guys. Andy, what are your family traditions around the holidays?
We do brunch. So, yeah, we used to do dinner for a long time. And once my brothers and I got in our teens, we like to misbehave on Christmas. So we try to get out of the house. And it was really hard for Mom to get us back in the house for Christmas dinner. She made a very sturdy Midwestern kind of dinner, usually. Where
were you growing up?
This is in Clearwater.
Clearwater.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, everybody from Clearwater is from the Midwest.
Right. So, so there was a lot of that, just getting out of the house. And eventually she kind of smartened up and was like, let's do the main meal in the morning before we open presents and before the boys scatter like leaves. So
you'd have brunch.
Yeah. And
it would involve, what, eggs?
Yeah, she makes an egg casserole with this, mushroom sauce. We do French toast with, soaking the baguette overnight, usually with like a berry compote. There's this monkey bread that's just insane with pecans and cherries. And it's all washed down with eggnog. There's her signature cheesecake. It's just a train wreck of calories, but it is so good. And then, of course, all of her Christmas cookies, which she still makes. And she doesn't make quite as many varieties as before, but like there's 4 essentials. So
Now, what about you? Have you continued the tradition?
Yeah, I mean, I always make something and bring it to brunch. So I usually bring a protein of some kind. So lately, my brother and I have kind of fixated on tortillere, which is like a Quebecois meat pie with lots of kind of savory holiday spices. So that I've been making that for a couple of years now, and it's a lot of fun because it's kind of traditional to freeze it and serve it later. So we'll make it around like Thanksgiving time.
Well, I think it takes 3 times before it becomes a tradition, so keep it up.
Right. Actually, this might be the 3rd year, and I think it's better than ever because we keep adding more spices. I'll say, I want to taste those spices. I don't want a suggestion.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're tripling the spices now, and I finally feel like it's right. So.
Jeff Houck, what about you? What are your growing up? What were your family?
We would all get. I had a big Italian family, so we would all get together. My grandmother and my aunts would cook, and inevitably lead to some sort of fight. But it was always a good time. And when I got a little bit older, my father was a great cook, and he would make rib roast. And I remember my first time having escargot was he bought escargot to have at the house, and complete with the plates and everything. And my dad was a used car dealer. I mean, he was not, this high-flying gourmand or anything, and I just liked the fact that was a little bit of an experiment.
And have you continued the family
No,
tradition?
you know what? I kind of created our own is that I make pizzelles every year.
Pizzelles,
I bought a brand new pizzelle maker this year. Some people buy sports cars. I buy pizzelle makers, and I made those this year. I try to make cookies every year, and then the Christmas ham is important, and I work at the Columbia, so everybody who works for the 1905 family restaurants gets a free ham.
Oh my gosh!
And that is not a bad thing. Not a bad perk of the job.
Not a bad thing.
No.
Not a bad thing. My own personal stuff. We had different kinds of things, but we always had the cookies that my mom would make. Many of which she learned to make in Germany. So these are German cookies because my father was he was in the Army, based in Germany a couple of times. I was born in Germany. So every year, crescent cookies. My dad would make bourbon balls. So I'm making those too every year to try to keep the traditions alive. Mm-hmm. And we want to hear from you what your family traditions are. If you call us, please call 813-239-9663 and share your holiday family traditions. And we have David on the line, and he is going to share, I think. David, are you there?
Oh, hey, yeah. Hey, Tom. Hey, this is David Bryant. How are you doing?
Good to have you, David.
Great. Thank you.
Tell us what yours are.
Well, one thing that I was thinking is kind of unique is my family settled in Dade City back in the 1870s. So we're kind of old school Florida crackers, and my family still lives there off of River Road, east of town. But one tradition was making swamp cabbage for Christmas, and it was like boiled hearts of palm with like some pork and lots of salt, and it was just super tasty.
Yeah, sounds great.
Kind of a kind of tradition that you don't see from Midwestern or Northern folks. And
would you go out into the swamp and get your own swamp cabbage, David, or?
Not myself, but my dad and my cousins have, and it's a lot of damn work too.
Yeah,
yeah, because it's not easy to get that husk off the outside of the palm, but it's worth it though. It's really super tasty, and I haven't had to use the machete yet or the chainsaw to get it yet.
David makes a great point. I think Christmas is a time when people will invest the time to do hard things that they wouldn't do at any other time of the year.
That's true.
And that makes a great memory.
That's true. That's true. What about your protein, David? Do you have a traditional protein to consume?
We usually, I guess, do a turkey.
Yep.
My dad's actually going to do a deep fried turkey, which is kind of tasty. I think that's super, super yummy. And
yeah, that is.
He knows how to do it safely, too, without blowing up the house and the yard, burning down the yard and stuff.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks for sharing your traditions with us, David.
Sure. Thanks for the show.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about holiday food traditions, and we would like it if you would call us and share with us what your traditions are. If you call 813-239-9663, we're here with food writers Andy Hughes and Jeff Houck, and we have another call from Adrian in Tampa. Adrian, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. What are your Christmas traditions?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, my grandmother married a Cuban, 150% Cuban. So we had the traditional lechon asado, roast pork, black beans, white rice, yuca, and we also would have turrón and flan and pretty much the same thing that most Campeños have Christmas Eve.
Now, did you have soft or hard turrón?
We had a variety. My uncle would make a platter with 3 or 4 different types.
Explain what that is.
You know, Andy would probably be able to describe it better than me.
It's a Spanish nougat, basically. It's a but a real nougat, not the kind of stuff we get in the middle of like a Three Musketeers bar. Yeah, it's made with honey and almonds typically.
The kind that I saw in France at the Christmas markets.
Right.
Yes.
So
they
again, another perk of the Columbia is Richard Gonsmart gave gifts to the staff this year, and it was 3 bottles of wine and a brick of turrón.
Oh, very nice.
Love
But
it.
Adrian, did you have it? Have you carried on this tradition? What's your current family tradition?
Well, I go. My parents have passed away, and most of my siblings. So I eat with others. Like, for example, I'll be eating at Henry Chesabal's tonight, and of course they're having roast pork, black beans, white rice.
Okay.
Lovely.
And as far as the turrón, there's different types of it. There's the soft one, there's the hard kind, but we always gravitated to the soft one, the almond one, the one that would melt in your mouth.
Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Adrian, for calling. I really
Thanks.
appreciate you sharing this.
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
All right.
Now, if you'd like to share some of your family traditions, you can also email us at dj@wmnf.org or text us at 813-433-0885. Now, I know for many people, a tradition at Christmas time is fruitcake. Now, whether they're using this for doorstops or they're actually eating it, I don't know.
You said the F word.
I did. Fruitcake. The one I am familiar with is Claxton's.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
Right.
made in Georgia, I believe, right? But Jeff, before you worked at the Columbia restaurant, you were a food writer for the Tampa Tribune, and so tell us your fruitcake story.
Well, it's not my fruitcake. It's Tampa's fruitcake story. In 1951, a woman named P.J. Harvey won a contest in the Tribune, a $5 prize, and her white fruitcake was judged to be the best recipe in that contest. And it became an annual tradition to print the recipe on the next food section after Thanksgiving. And that was sacrosanct. I learned when I joined the Tribune in 2002, we do this every year. There's no discussion.
51 years later.
51 years later. And it lasted until, I guess, the paper closed in 2014, and I did it in 2013 before I left. And it was the kind of thing where people would email in May and June and say, when are you going to print it? And this is after the internet where you could scour anything, but people just loved the tradition of it.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, I kind of tried to play with it a little bit, and we started doing fruitcake haiku contests that were judged by celebrities. I had Pioneer Woman as a judge. I had Dory Greenspan. I had just amazing people who were promoting books, and I'm like, oh, I'll promote your book if you judge my contest. And people just had great fun with it, but, it's one of those things you love to hate and you hate to love. And
Did you ever make it?
I made it once, and it cost a fortune. And, I looked back at the original story about her fruitcake, and she said she spent $3.60 in 1951, and that equates today to about $36 for one fruitcake, which it kind of busts the budget. But these days there are fewer producers of the candied fruits that are used in them, so the price has gone up, as everything has gone up. But it's still beloved as a ritual, and I even looked again this year, and that recipe has traveled far and wide and continues to be reproduced and beloved. And it
Reproduced where?
In newspapers and publications and websites, you name it. It's sort of like it became sort of like the green bean casserole of Christmas. I I was kind of overwhelmed at how beloved it was outside of Tampa, and it was very much a Tampa thing. And even though it didn't really identify, it wasn't like Have a Tampa Cigars or Cigar City Beer or anything like that. It didn't have the Tampa print on it. It was definitely a legacy recipe from here.
Well, there was a local connection too, right?
Yeah, there was. It was, you know,
the fruit.
The fruit actually was produced in Hillsborough County for many, many years by a company that was sort of like the number one fruit producer, and they went out of business about 10 years ago. And that definitely changed. That happened because of, you know, they were family owned, but also the economics of it were not good. And, you know, fewer people started making it. It's sort of like the butterscotch pie at Goody Goody. People, the ingredients to make that pie went out of style and had to be cobbled together in order to make the pie. Same thing with the fruitcake. Not everybody has access to, you know, the ingredients to make it.
Mrs. Harvey, it looks like you sent me the original article, was lived in Seminole Heights.
She did, on Swanee.
And well, it cost $3.60. She won $5.
Which cut in, you know, that helped pay for about a corner of the fruitcake. Yeah, she, and then, you know, to cut costs, I mean, you think about it, 1951, essentially a $36 baked good, and you know that wasn't the only one she did, what that cost 5 years, 6 years after the war, and how scarce ingredients might have been still.
Yeah.
She shelled her own pecans, you know, to kind of, you know, save a little bit of cost, but there's
a lot of pecans in this recipe. It's like 2 pounds.
It is like a piñata instead of a fruitcake. It is a pecan piñata.
It's got, well, first of all, it weighs 5 pounds.
But the key, though, is you don't just put the pecans in and chop them up. You toast them so that the oils come out, and it gives it a warmth to it.
Oh, yeah.
I learned that the hard way when I made it. I made it, and I didn't toast them. And I'm like, you know what, that's the big mess.
I made the same mistake with my mom's almond crescent cookies. Didn't toast those almonds, and it's a remarkable amount of flavor that comes out. The difference is incredible,
yeah. Right.
So, as I mentioned previously, we are talking to Jeff Houck and Andy Hughes about holiday traditions. Please call us at 813-239-9663 to share yours, or email us at dj@wmnf.org, or call us or text us at 813-433-0885. We do have an email from Bubba, who says that my pappy would always serve whatever roadkill we could haul, relatively fresh, to the trailer when I was younger in rural East Fort Myers. If we were lucky, we had venison for Christmas dinner. If not, we ate armadillo. And we liked it.
It depends on how long you drive around, really. If you're willing to go a tank of gas to kill a venison, you know.
I do remember one remarkable Christmas in Kansas, because my dad was stationed there, and we had squirrel, everything that he had, venison that he had hunted. It was pretty amazing. That only happened one year, so not really a tradition.
I'd like to bring back calling people Pappy.
I like Pappy.
Pappy is a great name, great moniker.
So now another tradition, not necessarily food, but drink is tradition, is eggnog. My dad used to make his own eggnog, and my siblings are sad that nobody wrote down the recipe. I do know, just from memory, that he for some reason used ice cream when he made it. I made some for the first time this year, using a recipe from a cocktail newsletter I subscribe to, Cocktails with Suderman. I highly recommend it.
How'd it come out?
It came out great.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize is you can age eggnog, and it actually improves with age. Now, Jeff, I know there's a Puerto Rican version of this.
Yep.
That you made this recently?
Yeah, I made it we had our office white elephant party last week, and I made coquito for the first time. And I did it because our corporate chef, Jerry Bayona, has made it for, you know, previous seasons. And he's Puerto Rican, and I was like, well, I can read a recipe. I'm not Puerto Rican. And, you know, it takes a tremendous amount of condensed milk and sweetened milk and coconut milk and all those good things. But the flavor was remarkable, especially if you soak it in the cinnamon sticks and you add a decent amount of nutmeg. And let's just admit it that everything tastes better with rum.
Yep.
Especially good rum, and used a little of bamboo in there, and then topped it off when you made a glass of it. But it was, I was surprised that, again, it's one of those things where you never think about making it, and then you make it, and you're like, oh, I understand why people really love this.
Yeah, my dad always put rum, bourbon, and Applejack brandy for some reason. And I've recently learned that was very popular in the South, particularly, Applejack brandy to put in your eggnog. What about you, Andy? Did you drink eggnog growing up?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I absolutely love the stuff. I try to stay away from it. I don't think the stores sell it in small enough portions, Everything's like a pint or
because
half a
it doesn't
gallon.
take much eggnog to satisfy one, right?
Yeah. So I can't buy it. I can't buy
So
it.
you
It's
make
about
your
the
own?
size of an IV bag.
Right. But my mother does make it, so I really enjoy it on Christmas. That's kind of one of the things that I have to watch is like, don't drink too much eggnog before I'm done with the brunch feast. So it's it's definitely first world problems. But and incidentally, last year I was thinking about fruitcake, and I was like, why hasn't anyone added chocolate to these things? And I looked up, and sure enough, Claxton now sells like chocolate covered chunks of fruitcake.
That sounds delicious.
And I ordered some, and it was damn good.
Was it good?
But they
Okay.
don't do dark chocolate, and to me, that would be the ultimate.
That would be.
Yeah.
That would be. Now, when I mentioned that we were in France just recently visiting Christmas markets and one stop in Germany, and a lot of what they call Glühwein there. It's mulled wine. So that's really
Oh, yeah.
those markets, I'm convinced, are just an excuse to drink. Everybody is wandering around.
Well, that's
with cups.
coquito too. I mean, it's like if you're going to have Applejack and everything, just leave the eggs out of it and just drink it
Just
straight.
go ahead and drink it straight, yeah. So I think that's a wonderful tradition of mulled wine.
Sure.
Right.
Nice and warm. And
Well, especially you're out in the Christmas market, you're outdoors.
it's cold.
It's cold, right?
It's cold.
Yeah, a warm.
Yeah,
a
I had to
warm
buy
drink.
Long Johns for that trip.
But yeah, and I had a friend, and for many years we did glug. That's the Swedish version of the same thing.
Oh, glug.
Yeah, it's a mulled wine. Yeah, it's called glug.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody chooses to cook at home. A lot of people will go out. It's their tradition to eat somewhere else. Let somebody else do the cooking. A close friend who every year went to Burns for Christmas Eve with her kids. When the reservations got harder to get, they kind of dropped that, but then they did go back again this year. For somehow the daughter managed to get a reservation. But Jeff, now that you work at the Columbia is open, I guess, every day?
Every day there's not a hurricane. Yeah.
Okay. You close for hurricanes?
Well, they kind of forced us to.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're open 365 days, and the holidays have always been a tradition at the Columbia, even in the earliest days. They would celebrate Thanksgiving and whatnot, but Noche Buena is huge, obviously, among the Cuban and Spanish population, but Anglos have adopted it as well. We do. Right now, there's a tent behind the Columbia where it's dispensing we do Noche Buena to go and a Christmas ham to go, and people are picking up. But we're expecting a record number of guests tomorrow for lunch and for dinner. There's more for lunch than there are dinner, and it's
How many people are you expecting?
a couple.
A couple?
I think we're looking at something like 1,700 people for lunch,
Wow.
and
And then something. So then dinner, you're going to have about 3,000.
yeah, it's
Seatings, I mean-
I don't know how we do it, quite honestly. It's 1,300 for lunch, and then another 1,000 or so for dinner.
So but that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, and yet
And that doesn't count the to-go orders.
no, and people can call and get to go. People ask, "Can you walk in?" I'm like, "Yeah, but it's going to be a while." And we are open at all of our main locations, not the Columbia Cafe at the History Center on Water Street, but all the other locations are open, including the airport. We serve, all the holiday meals at our main locations. But people I think this year are really gravitating. We saw it at Thanksgiving. They're really gravitating toward stability and comfort and convenience. there's some people whose houses are still messed up from the hurricane, and this is giving them a chance to kind of take a break and celebrate in a way that doesn't feel like more work on top of work.
And so all the you have Columbia's. I'm not going to list them all, but you have about 6 different
I can
ones.
do it quick. Sarasota, St. Augustine, Celebration, and Sankey and Clearwater Beach, and the one in Ybor as well.
And they're all doing Christmas.
They're all doing Christmas, and they're doing the lechon, asado. They're doing the moros y cristianos, which is the black and white rice come together with the pork in it. It's they do all the traditional yuca and the plantanos and all that, and it's very homespun in a restaurant setting. Let's put it that way. And the staff is phenomenal. It's just a lovely, warm feeling, even though you're in a restaurant and it's the height of the holiday season. And
and generally these are families that are coming. It's not just
it's not just the families. It's a Gansmart family. I mean, they celebrate at the Columbia, and it's not because they own the restaurant. It's because that's what feels like home. And their family always celebrated the holidays in a big way. But it's large parties, and then our other restaurants, Eulalia and Casa Santo Stefano, are closed on Christmas Day, but they're open before and after. But Columbia has this 5 generations of tradition of celebration, and you can taste it in the food. It's very moving, I think.
Okay, so we're going to continue this conversation about holiday food and drink right after this.
Jazz is alive at WMNF. Tune in Sunday evenings at 8 for Colors of Jazz at our new time, featuring new releases from new artists, old favorites, international jazz from Europe, Asia, and Canada, covering everything from big band swing to bop to fusion. We play it all, plus specials celebrating the music of giants like Ellington, Miles Davis, Pat Metheny, Quincy Jones, Chick Corea, even Frank Zappa. We play the music you'll hear no place else on the radio. Check out our interviews with local jazz musicians. Jazz is what America sounds like, and it's yours to listen to come Sunday evening. If you can't catch us live, play it back from the archives.
Welcome back to Wavemakers with Janet and Tom. This is Tom flying solo today while Janet is away preparing for Christmas, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about Christmas, Hanukkah, holiday food and drink traditions through the years. If you would like to join our conversation, share with us your family traditions, please call us at 813-239-9663, or you can email us at dj@wmnf.org, or text us at 813-433-0885. And we'd love to hear what you're doing for Hanukkah. What are you doing for Christmas? What are you doing for New Year's? One thing that has become increasingly popular, particularly among Italian Americans, is the Feast of the Seven Fishes. Now, is this something you all have ever attended?
I've not, but I've heard about people who do. We have, like I said, Casa Santo Stefano, which is our Sicilian restaurant in Ybor City. And there's been a lot of pressure to do this. It's not something that's necessarily celebrated from its origin in Italy. It's more of an Italian-American thing, but it's also wrapped up in sort of the eating seafood and abstinence and, kind of getting ready for the holiday thing. But it's from what I understand, it's wonderful and it's elaborate, but it's kind of hard to pull off in a restaurant setting. So, it was something we discussed, but we kind of leave it to the professionals at home to kind of execute, because it's get complex.
Yeah, I think it's also because it's 7 fishes. There's something you mentioned earlier, that Christmas is a time when you do the hard thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and also the abundant thing.
Very much so.
So you want to have. You don't want to just have a little bit of food. You want a groaning table of food, right?
Yeah, if I'm not limping as I leave the table, I'm just not happy. If I haven't been wounded by proteins and sugars, it just doesn't feel like a holiday.
Well, it seems like Italian families, you don't do the 7 fishes make up for it in other ways, like giant pans of ziti or something like that. It's
got to have the ziti.
Right.
We are talking about holiday traditions, so if you want to join us, please call 813-239-9663 or email us at dj@wmnf.org. And it looks like we've got... is Janet on the phone?
Me.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
This is my wife and wonderful co-host, Janet, calling in from Christmas Central. What are you doing?
I'm just busy making some appetizers and getting the table set and doing that sort of thing for Christmas Day. We're going to have some people over, but I want to talk a little bit about our traditions, my family traditions when I was growing up, because I was raised Jewish, and my dad's birthday happened to be on December 25th.
Wow.
So one thing that we would do on Christmas Day, which he enjoyed, was go to somebody else's house to eat non-kosher food. We would have lobster at somebody else's house to celebrate Christmas for him, or his birthday, and that's what we did on Christmas Day, or we would go to a Chinese restaurant. A lot of Jewish people would go out for Chinese food on Christmas because the Chinese restaurants were open, and of course those folks are not celebrating Christmas. So that was kind of our tradition, and we celebrated Hanukkah and did latkes. We would make latkes. That was a really big deal. Every year we made latkes, and we would play dreidel. We would have the dreidel game. You'd spin a dreidel. It's a little top game, and you literally gamble. We gambled at a young age with little gold coins. That's what you did with the dreidel game. Was actually a little gambling game where you won coins and put money in the pot and that sort of thing. And we all had our own menorahs with our family. We had 4 kids and 2 adults. And everybody had their own menorah, and we would all light our candles each night. And, at the end, we'd have 6 menorahs on the table with 9 candles in them. And it would just be a hot mess. We'd have tinfoil all over the table so that the candles could just drip down and melt all over each other and melt away.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was our holiday tradition. And we had New Year's was a big deal. We'd always have friends over and have a big party and make chains out of construction paper and decorate our basement for New Year's Eve. So those are my fond holiday memories.
And who would make the latkes? Your mom?
My mom made the latkes. My mom would make the latkes, and it was, you would grate the potatoes and soak them in water to get the starch out, mix them with some onion, maybe some flour. It makes a terrible, terrible mess all over the kitchen. So delicious. And then we would eat them when we were really young, we would just put white sugar on them. And then, so you would eat potato pancakes with white sugar on them. And then when we were older, we would have them with sour cream and applesauce, a little bit more like of a German kind of thing. In fact, when we were just in France and Germany at the Christmas markets, we did have some delicious fried potatoes with
applesauce.
Not with applesauce, but like lingonberry jam.
That's right.
And sour cream.
Yeah. That was really good. Now, lots of oil involved in the production of latkes, right?
Yeah, it makes a mess all over the place.
I was shocked how much oil was involved, but that reflects the Hanukkah miracle of the oil lasting 8 days instead of 1 day.
8 days, right.
Right.
A theoretical miracle. It's a Jewish holiday. One of the few Jewish holidays that's actually not in the Bible. Sort of a fabricated holiday, but a very nice.
But the oil only lasted because they weren't making latkes then, huh? Or plantains.
The miracle is that they lasted through 8 latkes.
Right. And there's also some places they do donuts. The whole point is to fry something, and so like in Israel, a lot of times they do donuts on Hanukkah.
So I'm not sure. I mentioned earlier in the show that you also made arugula.
I did make arugula, but that's not a holiday tradition. That's just a Jewish pastry that I make because when I was growing up in Ohio, we got all of our good Jewish food in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. That's where we would go. They had the big Jewish communities there. And arugula were these cookies made with a cream cheese dough. You roll them into little crescents. They're typically filled with like apricot jam or strawberry jam. I like best just raisins and cinnamon and walnuts. But when I moved to Florida, I couldn't find them anywhere. The Clearwater Bagel makes them now, but they're not like I had when I grew up. Publix actually used to make them when I first moved to Tampa, and they were not bad, but not like I had when I was growing up. So I found a recipe that was similar to how I had them when I was growing up. So I just make those myself every year around Christmas time.
Have you tried Mazzaro's?
No, they're good there?
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah, and actually, my mother makes kolaches, and it's a similar dough. It's a cream cheese, kind of dough.
But don't try going there on Christmas Eve.
Right, and it's
insane
yes,
scene.
It's a full body contact sport.
It's the feast of 7,000 parking spots.
It sure is. But Janet, as long as we're on the subject of dessert, we haven't talked about this one tradition that's kind of become a tradition in our family because of a friend of ours, Stephanie, who makes bûche Noël. And the bûche Noël, for those who don't know, it's basically chocolate cake, but it's shaped into something that looks like a log. And we saw some amazing versions when we were in France.
Although our friend makes it better than any, honestly. I didn't taste any of the ones that we saw in France, but her bûche Noël is much better than any.
Much more attractive. It looks like a real log.
You got to spend time on it. It's like a sculptural work. It's incredible.
The other thing we discovered in while we were in France, that we were happy to discover, was that oysters are a big deal this time of year. And Janet found out that half of all oysters eaten in France are eaten between Christmas and New Year's.
Wow.
I must be French.
Their oysters are fantastic. Let me just say, it was a taste of an oyster that sent Anthony Bourdain off on his food journey.
That was the launch.
Yeah, that was the launch.
I will tell you, though, that I went I had to be like Fight Club to get into Fresh Market yesterday on Henderson, and they had Yule logs there. And they
did.
They were beautiful.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
If you can get there, yeah, they're there. Or they were yesterday.
Okay, we've got another call on the line, Janet. We're going to have to let you go, and we had another caller who hung up. If he wants to call back, we'll get him on the air as well. So
I'm loving the show, loving all the hearing about the holiday traditions. Eager to hear what the next caller says.
Okay,
Happy Hanukkah, Janet.
Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah.
bye. We also have Christina on the line from St. Pete. Christina, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Good morning, and Merry Christmas to you. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I'm going to speak quickly and then get off and listen to the conversation because I have a few minutes left of my break. But I'm Italian-American, and I love that you were just talking about the Feast of the Seven Fishes and all things Italian Christmas. My mother, my family's 100% Italian, so it's Italian food every Christmas Eve. Back in the day, I don't know how my mother did it, but she would do an open house in St. Pete where she would just invite all the neighbors, our friends, whatever family could come down from New York. And we had upwards of 40 to 70 people, and she would just put a big, long table in the backyard. And we never did all 7 fishes. We joke about that every year because we're like, okay, we made it to 4. We didn't make it to 7 because it's just so hard to get all 7 in. It's so much work. But my mother mainly made mussels with red sauce. That's always been our tradition for like 40 years, mussels with red sauce. And then some real great crusty Italian bread on the side, maybe some crab, maybe some cod, maybe some shrimp. Always, eggplant parmesan is one of our Christmas Eve. And just tons of antipasto, broccoli rabe, what have you. Then we'd always have Italian desserts that my mother made, tiramisu. And then we would go to Mazzaro's back in the day and get the sfogliatelle and all the cannolis, all the different pastries. But it was wonderful. And shout out to Casa Stefano. I really want to come. My grandfather's Sicilian. My grandmother is Napolitan. But I'm hoping that I can find an Italian restaurant here in Tampa Bay area that actually plays Italian-American music or Italian-European music because I'm from New York originally and dined a lot in Brooklyn and Queens at just about every Italian restaurant. And they always play Italian music. And downtown St. Pete has a lot of Italian restaurants, but I have yet to walk into one where they're always playing Italian music. So if you have those nights, let me know because
Jeff, get on
I'm
that.
really looking for that authenticity.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to hearing the rest of your show while I'm slow at my desk here. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks for calling, Christina.
Buon Natale.
Well, there we go.
See, I dropped that on you.
I'm impressed.
No, we have we definitely have Italian music, not live music in the lower part of the building in the restaurant, but we do have Italian music on Muzak, if that means anything. But yeah, it's just a very intense time in Italian American households with the Christmas Eve service and midnight mass, and if you don't stay up and watch the Pope, then are you really even Catholic, kind of thing. And this year is the year of the Jubilee. We were my wife Grace and I were in Rome and saw all the preparations being made. So this is going to be a big year to be Italian American on Christmas.
If you're just joining us, we're talking holiday food and drink traditions with two local food writers, Andy Hughes and Jeff Hauk, who are also the authors of The Definitive History of the Cuban Sandwich, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But if you'd like to join our conversation and share with us some of your family traditions at Christmas, please call us at 813-239-9663. Or you can email us at dj@wmnf.org or text us at 813-433-0885. And we do have an email from John in Tampa, not the John in Tampa who's running our board, who says that even though we are Jewish, my dad was the Santa for decades at an Xmas Eve South Tampa neighborhood party. I'm following suit as Santa at my Ybor Rotary Club party at the Columbia, where you can give presents to 30 kids from Shore Elementary, the public school in Ybor.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. I had friends who lived in Carrollwood, and one of the years that Hanukkah and Christmas was close, the husband was Cuban and she was Jewish, and he buried a pig in the backyard and cooked it over banana leaves, and
wow.
They had latkes and everything like that. I think there's a lot of blended families who celebrate and kind of cross the lines there, so to say.
Absolutely, and I think you have mentioned to me that you had an experience with making applesauce for latkes, right?
Yeah, my buddy Alan Snell, the reporter who worked at the Tampa Tribune, every year has Latke Fest. This year, he sent an invitation, and he lives in Las Vegas, and it was the Las Vegas Sphere, the sphere that says Latke Fest on it. And I learned how to make applesauce and realized it was super easy, and the flavor was so much better. I'm like, oh, this is one of those things where you wish you had made it sooner.
You used fresh apples?
Fresh apples, wow. and I had an apple-shaped food warmer, so it was like it could not be any more apple-y. But it was one of those things where it was super easy to make, and it always got people's attention. Like, you made apples? And I'm like, this is like pouring water. It's that easy. And so I got massive credit for doing something super easy because nobody makes applesauce at home.
That's for sure.
I have an interesting story. I think that sort of goes back to the roots of Ybor City. I don't know how many people have heard this story before. It was retold by Ferdy Pacheco in his Noche Buena cookbook, which I don't know if any of the stories are true. That's the thing with Ferdy book. You're not quite sure. But there's, there is some basis for this story. So when Ybor City was first started in 1885, it was under construction. The first cigars weren't actually produced until April of 1886. And so all these kind of workers came over to start work, and it may have been actually the Christmas of 1886, but workers had come over, and Ybor was still sort of hadn't come together quite yet, and it was just being built and everything, and it was really easy to get home, so all the workers could just hop on a steamship and go to Cuba. And Ybor was deathly afraid they wouldn't come back. It was really rough. There was a lot of gators, rattlesnakes, etc. Tampa wasn't all that attractive of a place, even compared to Key West at the time, which was much more developed. Most of the workers had come from there. But so long story short, he threw a big party on Noche Buena and invited all of his workers. And so well ahead of time, he sent them all invites, said they would be picked up by horse-drawn carriage, which is like the limo back in the day, and brought to his estate. So he had a really nice house. And when they arrived, all the trees were illuminated with Japanese lanterns. There was all these big tables, set out with all kinds of food, all the stuff that they would want to eat. And he said there was a big surprise, kind of a gift. And so at the end of the feast, he announced that all the profits that were made by the Ybor factory that year will be shared among the workers.
Wow.
And so that it was successful in that it kept them in Tampa, not going back to Cuba and thinking, I'm not going back to that place. And so it was sort of a gamble. He spent a lot of money, but the workers stayed, and, Ybor City survived.
And the rest is history. It's the miracle of Christmas.
All right.
Now, we've talked a lot about Christmas and Hanukkah. Now, there's also traditions wrapped around New Year's. I'm told. I don't really know much about eating 12 grapes. The Spanish eat 12 grapes. Jeff, you said they eat it under a table?
Yeah, it's 12 grapes under a table.
Yeah.
Why there's a table and why it's 12, I don't know, but it's supposed to bring luck and prosperity. And it's I don't know that it's that pervasive a tradition, especially in the United States, but yeah, it is a thing.
Yeah, as is in the South in particular, Hoppin' John.
I make it every year.
You make it every year?
I do. Yeah, I figured out how to make it in the Instant Pot a couple years back, and that cuts down a lot of time, but...
So what is tell our listeners what
Hoppin' John is?
Is
black-eyed peas and rice, and you put a little, pork product in it and cook it over a long period of time with some, some onion and some green pepper and a couple other spices, and it comes out great. It's very satisfying. We like to do it Florida style and eat it on the patio by the pool. If we're lucky, it's a cold day. And then our tradition is we have Hoppin' John, and then we go to the beach every year on Christmas Day to start out the Florida way.
Yeah. Well, Hoppin' John's supposed to give you good luck the rest of the year. If you don't eat it, you're going to have bad luck.
It's worked so far.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
I'd say, are you going to go to the beach this year? They're kind of messed up.
That's the whole reason to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, the beaches are bouncing back, and usually we go down to Paso Grill and walk the beach, walk to the Don and back from, the 22nd Street or 22nd Avenue. And it's just, I like to feel the toes in my sand and start the year that way, no matter how cold it is.
I haven't been since the hurricanes. I'm almost afraid to go because the photos were so horrific. Particularly,
yeah, and that's 3 months ago, but and totally understandable. But they've done heroic work out there, and they really could use your support. We have the Columbias in San Key and Sarasota, and Chacha Coconuts in Sarasota and St. Armands, and they're picking back up, but it's definitely a time to support them.
Yeah, I think in Sunset Beach, the Katiki was the last to close and the first to reopen.
Yep.
So they're committed. I mentioned earlier that you all are the co-authors of the definitive history of the Cuban sandwich.
With Barbara Cruz, who couldn't be here today.
Thank you. Barbara couldn't be here today.
She's preparing for Noche Buena tonight. Yeah. And she has a house full.
She's Cuban.
Yes.
Yeah, she gives us authenticity because, man, that woman can cook, and she knows her history, and she's just such a great authority, and she teaches us all the dirty words.
And like every other Cuban family, the menu is going to be pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
It's roast pork.
Right. You have to have roast pork.
Yeah.
Black beans. Mm-hmm. White rice, not yellow rice.
Or moros and cristianos.
Or moros, cristianos. Okay, yeah.
Yuca.
Got to have the yuca with lots of garlic, right?
Yep. Right. Tons of garlic.
Probably some plantains in there.
Plantains, yep. And Cuban bread, I'm assuming,
Have to, yeah.
Finished off with flan and some café con leche.
You never know what alcohol might flow, too.
There might be some alcohol involved.
Right.
But she couldn't be here today. Unfortunately, I wish she could have been here so she could have talked about some of her...
She did tell us about one tradition, which I think I can share because it's common enough. But Cubans often make buñuelos for the holidays, so it's sort of a fried dough, often soaked in syrup. Anyway, I guess it's pretty common for Cubans to fashion them into vulgar shapes, taken after the human anatomy.
I never knew that.
And actually, a friend of mine, another friend, I asked her if she did that, and she's like, no, we're not that Cuban. We're Spanish. We're more Spanish than Cuban. I was like, I love Cuban culture, though.
The other thing that Barbara's dealing with is whenever family comes up from Miami, they bring their own Cuban bread.
Right.
They travel with their own
prepare their lousy Cuban bread?
They're going to take their brittle eggshell Cuban bread up here, and she tolerates it because it's family. But yeah, every year she'll send us a photo. Look what my sister brought again.
Oh my God!
It's a thing. It's a thing.
It's
That's why when we were talking about the book, everybody wants to talk about salami as the big divider, and I think the divider is bread. And
it is.
Yeah.
Bread. I think you could start a fight over the bread because I will fight anybody from Miami who says it's a superior bread.
Well, also, I think you guys, the whole issue of pressing Cuban sandwiches is interesting because that seems to be more of a Miami thing. It was not traditionally done in Tampa. And I think the theory you all have developed is that it's because the bread is so good here. You've got to press that bread in Miami.
It's crunchy and crispy here whether you press it or not.
Right.
Theirs is a totally different experience. Like I can tell you, I drove by it today, La Segunda Central Bakery. It looks like there are ants on a sugar pile. There are people just going and getting their Cuban bread today. It's part of their tradition.
Yeah.
I can't imagine celebrating Noche Buena with Miami bread. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know why they can't develop good bread down there.
We don't reach down to Miami, do we, on this program?
Well, it is available by podcast. I should mention that Wavemakers is available wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for WMNF Wavemakers or search the WMNF archives. But your book did make some waves, especially among Tampa partisans who are convinced that the Cuban sandwich was invented in Tampa, in Ybor City, and, for cigar workers and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And despite reading your book, there are those who continue to hold on to this myth. Has that surprised you guys?
No.
Oh, I should cut to the chase. It was invented in Cuba.
Yeah. And I mean, it got rebranded here, I guess you could say. It became the Cuban sandwich rather than mixed dough here.
Because there was a mixed dough in Cuba.
Yeah.
And there was a mixed dough here, too.
And it was a mixed dough here.
Became...
Right. Yeah, and it also became less of a mixed dough and more of a, stabilized thing. This is what goes on the sandwich. Because before that, you'd get 1,000 different results depending on who you talk to. But what was interesting was just how similar, the earliest versions we found. So there might be... with the ham, there might be thin sliced chicken. We found chicken. Turkey a lot.
Turkey, yeah.
Things like that. So
and some sort of sausage, right?
Yeah, there was almost always like either
salchichon.
Right, salchichon, hard salami,
mortadella,
and even bologna. We heard, which we don't know if That's the other problem is a lot of the writers back then didn't know roast beef from ham. I mean, seriously, and they weren't interested in finding out and looking in the sandwich. So there's a lot of stuff where it's like, was it really roast beef? I'm not sure.
Well,
this writer, I'm not sure if I trust this person. So,
well, the Boozy Pig in West Tampa, which makes probably the best Cuban sandwich in town, fight me. They call it a mixto. They don't even call it a Cuban sandwich.
They do it because he's Sicilian and he's Cuban, and he wants to use those spices. And if he does something that's out of the ordinary and calls it a Cuban, people will fight him. The thing is that people cherry-picked what they liked in the book, and the people from Miami really loved the Miami part, and the people from Tampa, well, I think you're referring to is my friend Joe Citro, who, despite coming to our speeches and reading the book, still says Tampa was the home. And he's not wrong to a certain extent, but it's like people found the things that agreed with them in the book, but the book, the history, Andy did immaculate history on the origins.
Well, I mean, Tampa is home to the Tampa Cuban.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's agreed. And Miami's,
And I think at one point you said that it was invented in Cuba and perfected in Tampa. That's another way to look at it.
Right. Yeah. Well, Glenn Westfall, he said what the Cuban sandwich was born in Cuba, educated in Key West. And I say, okay, yeah. And then it came to adulthood in Tampa and retired in Miami.
What's crazy is in Key West, the standard Cuban comes with lettuce and tomato.
Right.
I don't know why, but that is the way a Key West Cuban is made.
Mm-hmm. And, whether that was available back then, it's very difficult to say and unlikely given what their proximity was. But, it's, again, I'm a big proponent of you like what you like, and it's...
and enjoy it. So the name of the book?
The Cuban Sandwich, A History in Layers.
And where is it available if people want to get a last-minute Christmas
Pretty
present?
much everywhere, yeah. Amazon.
Yeah,
the one thing I would
Exchange.
point out is for people who fight about it is that in 1898, when American soldiers were being sent to fight in Cuba, they were all going, man, I got to get me one of those Cuban sandwiches. And they all stopped in Tampa before they shipped out, or 30,000 of them did. And guess what? Not one mention of a Cuban sandwich.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, and, Miami didn't exist at that point.
Right.
That's it, guys. Thanks so much for this great show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up is Wide Awake America with Nadine Smith. She speaks with an author about the life of civil rights leader Mary McLeod Bethune and what her legacy can teach us about standing up for justice and equality. This is WMNF Tampa. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.